NBC Montana working for you. Wildfire season.
As we come on air, fire season is quickly approaching. Tonight we're taking a look at why officials are anticipating a busy summer. Plus a neighborhood in Oregon starting over from scratch after wildfires burnt it to the ground in 2020. The steps families are taking to prevent this kind of devastation from happening again. And
fire season is here, and what can Western Montana expect from this year's fire season? I'll break down the details coming up in a few minutes.
we begin this Working for You special report with Governor Gianforte and state officials delivering the 2024 fire season briefing earlier this May. NBC Montana's Jacob Owens reports what's being done to prevent catastrophic wildfires.
Fire season 2024 was all the talk in Helena as officials gave their annual briefing. But what kind of fire season Montanans can expect is still up in the air.
We'll be briefing the governor probably within the next couple weeks on the fire forecast. It's simply too soon to tell.
Despite the lack of a current forecast for summer blazes, several of those who spoke had a similar message.
I want to make sure everyone is aware the state of Montana and DNRC is prepared for the 2024 fire season.
Governor Gianforte says the risk of severe wildfires can be mitigated with aggressive attack on all fires and active forest management. He says this aggressive attack should not just occur initially, but until a fire is completely out. The governor says last year, 96% of the fires under the state's direct protection did not exceed 10 acres in size.
The smaller a fire is, the fewer resources that are needed to contain it before it gets out of hand. Aggressive attack helps keep wildfires small while minimizing their impact.
Matt Hall, with the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, anticipates filling the department's seasonal firefighting positions within the next few weeks. Reporting in Helena, Jacob Owens, NBC Montana.
The West Coast is finally free from drought, but trees are still dying. The U.S. Forest Service estimates another 30 million California trees dead, this time in the northern and central Sierra Nevadas. As sign forests emerge from the 3-year driest years on record, KSNV's Ophelia Young asks, are we out of the woods?
Gray, green, and red. Those are the 3 colors that the Forest Service looks for when assessing forest health. And in the last 3 years, there has been too much red, a color that they also call red dead.
Very vibrant sometimes, and very orangey sometimes, very brick-like other times.
Red dead is the color of a tree that died in the last year.
Estimated somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 million recently killed trees.
That's just in 1 year.
1 year.
Finding that number is Jeffrey Moore's job. He oversees the Forest Service's aerial detection program surveying California and has spent every summer in the last decade midair.
I'll try to figure out exactly where that is that I'm seeing this, draw a polygon, Bishop Pine, Ponderosa Pine, and then I do a severity and then enter.
This is last year's flight season.
West of Tahoe in particular, a massive hit. It was very sad.
28.8 million trees dead, the 3rd highest year on record, bringing the total since 2016 when the droughts intensified to 200 million trees killed. During this time, we realized another culprit, fire suppression. 100 years of preventing fires backfired. Now we have too many trees fighting for too little water.
We have to get rid of those trees somehow.
On the ground, in the Tahoe National Forest, gray trees.
This is after it's lost its needles, very obviously just a dead tree.
Green trees.
Healthy and still have green needles.
Terminally red trees.
The needles have started to lose their color and fade out.
So next year this will be gray.
Next year this will be gray.
Silviculturist Ryan Davies says thirsty and fatigued trees are being eaten alive.
You get these little pitch masses on the exterior showing that a beetle has attempted to attack and lay eggs in that tree.
70, 80, 90% of the trees have been killed by the beetles here.
Ryan says these polygon areas are now loaded with fuel that can burn and burn, incinerating communities, contaminating air. Trees of all colors need to be purged, but especially the gray, and especially around towns.
This was probably burned only a few months ago, probably this winter that came through.
You can still smell it.
Yep, you smelled a little bit.
From preventing fire to using fire, but how much fire is just right? The Forest Service is cautiously returning good fires to the forest life cycle. Residents in Forest Hill also fight fire with fire. These preventative controlled burns are just a way of life after the 2022 mosquito fire, still seared into recent memories. Back in Jeff's home office, optimism.
The drought really dropped off then in 2023.
As he plans his first flight for after the snow melts. And Jeff looks forward to some brighter times.
I'll be able to enjoy a little bit of greenery.
So this year, the Forest Service is expecting more gray, but hoping for more green and less red. We'll find out in the next report, which will be released at the start of 2025. Reporting in the Tahoe National Forest, Ophelia Young.
A below-average snowpack is causing abnormally dry conditions in the Treasure State. Now, this has opened up Montana's window for controlled burns. In 2023, the Forest Service announced that 60,000 acres were successfully treated in Montana, Idaho, and the Dakotas. A new council is forming, which would bring even more prescribed fires into the state. The group will be composed of private landowners, businesses, and government agencies with the goal of performing more prescribed burns throughout the state.
We would rather be proactive and manage our forests now than have to deal with that, really bad day in the end of August where there's not much we can do to control wildfire.
According to the Coalition of Prescribed Fire Councils, over 30 states have already formed these councils. Berkey said Montana's council will be functioning by the end of April. Anyone who wants to get involved can join the council. Visit our homepage to find a link to join and read the full story. Also, be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms. A major shift in technology hopes to aid first responders in areas most prone for wildfire. KUTV's Brian Sheeney reports on the artificial intelligence movement to spot fires quicker.
Watching the TV, I see the fire. My wife said, "Hey, it looks like familiar right here." I don't expect it's in my backyard.
Juan Guerrero reflecting on the Knowles fire that came within feet of his home. A wildfire that prompted major evacuations for this Utah community.
Are you still concerned for the what-if scenario if this happens again?
Yeah, every year. Every year, like right now, especially right now, it's very dry.
The fire burned Juan's fence. The heat singed his home.
And now, like 3 years after, I expect it not happen again.
His neighbor's home.
It literally had burnt everything.
Just down the street.
We got way lucky. We got way lucky.
A near miss.
This one came literally right up to the edge.
You think it could happen here again?
Oh, definitely.
Back in 2020, when that fire ripped across this field and towards this line of homes in Saratoga Springs, some of the people that live in this neighborhood had eyes on the fire with some technology while others did not. Have you considered getting cameras to take a look at this part of the property?
Maybe in the future. It's a good idea.
If you spot it, yeah, if you see it, it's all about seeing it.
Helping first responders see it. In other western states, AI-powered wildfire cameras. But those cameras aren't everywhere, and they're not the norm.
There's a lot of work to be done to catch up to, say, a California or even an Oregon.
Utah is one of the most fire-prone states in the country. The Utah Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands says the state averages up to 1,000 wildfires each year. It has 0 AI cameras to spot a fire.
How valuable are these pieces of technology to what you do and what you're looking for?
They can be super valuable when a known fire happens.
The state has 14 wildfire cameras running right now, but they're traditional cameras and need a person watching them.
How can we leverage technology in the best and most efficient way possible to be able to mitigate risk?
That changes soon. The state of Utah, like its western neighbors, will get 5 of those AI cameras. In California, there are already more than 1,000 of these AI cameras in forests all over the state. On a very basic level, the cameras detect smoke, then alert first responders.
What's the timeline look like to hopefully get this up and running here in Utah, to get this technology here?
We'll have 5 cameras in this year of 2024.
So with these new cameras, is this more of a hands-off approach and let the camera do the work, the technology do the work?
I think it's a combination of just being able to more effectively notify first responders and those who would either go out there to take actions to mitigate or to suppress the fire in a quicker fashion.
For homeowners like Tania,
hopefully what we've done will stop any fires from burning our house down.
The sooner you can understand where a wildfire starts, the better off everyone's going to be.
I'm Brian Schnee reporting.
A community in the northwestern part of the country rebuilds after a wildfire destroyed the entire area. The changes they've made to ensure these new homes can withstand wildfires in the future. And if you see smoke and are out flying your drone, bring it down and put it away. You could be hindering firefighting efforts. Coming up after the break.
Want this place to go again. This needs to be a safe haven for people that want to be here.
Rebuilding from the rubble. In 2020, the city of Detroit, Oregon was overtaken by 2 massive wildfires. Years ago, KATU showed you what was left behind of Michelle Tesdale's family home. Tonight, how they are rebuilding with wildfire safety in mind. KATU's Barry Mangold recently visited Michelle in the Detroit neighborhood, which is unrecognizable from before the fires.
Oh my gosh, this is my house. This is all that's left of my house.
The Tesdall family home in Detroit, Oregon, reduced to rubble. Their 2-story home was at the center of 2 massive wildfires that converged on Detroit in the fall of 2020.
Oh, man.
Do you recognize what's around here now?
No, and most people that would come and visit that came after the fires didn't know how to find our house or find where we were at because they couldn't recognize the streets to turn on.
More than 3 years later, Michelle Tesdall remembers her family escaping the city and watching as her worst fears came true.
And we had the computer open and we were watching the fires, and they were little red dots basically showing the hot spots. And we're like, Detroit saved, and then pretty soon you saw them come together, and that's when our hearts just sank. It was, oh man, that was a hard day. Yeah. Hard day.
This is really hard to look at. Oh, man. Oh, God.
We put the rock wall back here.
But from the ashes, the Tesdall family and their neighbors have rebuilt their homes and neighborhood with wildfire safety in mind, using guidance from forestry officials.
Against the house, you'll notice that there's no plants. We were taught that it's not wise.
Limited space for plants and trees, reducing fuel for fires, and gaps between piles of firewood and their outside walls, keeping fire fuels away from the home.
Whatever we all could do for each other to stop a fire from running through our property and jumping on neighbors is something we got to think about.
Trees that once surrounded each home, creating a sense of lakeside enchantment and privacy, now replaced with a moat of gray rocks.
And we had to bring in lots of gravel, and it was disappointing. I mean, it's fire safe, but when you look around, that's all you see. So you have to decide what are you going to do? How narrow of a place do you want to make your driveway so you can put some more plantings in, so you can make it feel like home again and get your privacy back.
Michelle says as they finished construction on the house, they made the tough decision to move out of Detroit to live closer to their kids' schools. Although they won't be living in it, their new home represents their love for the small lakeside city and their commitment to making it as fireproof as possible.
We don't want this place to go again. This needs to be a safe haven for people that want to be here.
But the trees are far from gone. Inside the house, the floors and ceilings are made from the trees that were scorched by the 2020 wildfires, and outside, a single Douglas fir grows in the front lawn, a solemn reminder that what was destroyed can grow back, but with safety in mind for future generations. Reporting in Detroit, Oregon, I'm Barry Mangold.
Flying personal drones near an active wildfire is dangerous and illegal. Officials in California say in recent years, it's been a consistent issue of personal drones getting in the way of firefighting drones. Even one small drone in the sky can set back all fire aircraft from taking off. CAL FIRE says one reason the Dixie Fire continued to spread is partly because of the number of private drones that stopped the air attack. Utility companies are preparing for the drier months as they've come under fire for potentially starting some of the deadliest and most devastating fires in recent history. The steps they're taking to put an end to this trend. As wildfire season approaches, communities across the country are looking for ways to prevent fires from ever starting. Causes like lightning are outside of our control, but electricity is still flowing through wildfire country in the form of thousands of miles of power lines. KUTV's Lincoln Graves looks at how some utility companies are trying to stop power lines from causing an inferno.
Paradise, California in 2018. Large swaths of Oregon in 2020. Lahaina, Hawaii in 2023. All deadly examples of wildfires where utility company power lines have been the determined or suspected cause.
So we don't want to be the cause of the fire, and we also want to do anything that we can to reduce just overall wildfire risks.
Jonna Whitesides is a spokesperson for Rocky Mountain Power, which serves parts of Utah, Idaho, and Wyoming.
These have been replaced from the old poles to, again, the steel weathering ones.
He showed us how the utility has made investments over the past few years to reduce the risk of wildfires. For example, weather stations right by power lines.
So this is one of our, 400 plus weather stations.
To give better data about what's happening right next to utility infrastructure. They've tackled bigger projects too.
They've already buried all of our mainline power up the canyon from the bottom to the top.
Dan Canoop is mayor of Brighton, a sprawling mountain community encompassing 2 ski resorts and a large chunk of Utah's Big Cottonwood Canyon. Despite snow on the ground now, this is wildfire country.
We're very aware we're starting to have issues with insurance companies wanting to cancel insurance up here.
A prime place for Rocky Mountain Power to start burying power lines. They started in 2022, putting main lines underground. But Dan wanted more.
We begged and pleaded and convinced them to go ahead and do all the secondary lines.
That work is still to come, but all power lines in the canyon could eventually be underground. It's a type of mitigation many think should be done in many more places.
Why aren't we doing more of that everywhere?
And we get that question all the time, and we're going to do it where it makes the most sense and where it's most cost effective.
Undergrounding is expensive work, much of it eventually passed on to ratepayers. But it's also work that could have started years ago. Critics say utility companies have been slow to react.
Do you feel like seeing some of the really awful fires of the past 10 years was a catalyst for them to do this?
Yes.
Barbara Cameron has lived in Brighton for 25 years. She has high praise for Rocky Mountain Power, but she also wanted help years ago.
We had asked in years past for participation, but we knew it was an expensive process. And when they came to us 2 years ago, I was so surprised and delighted.
Pacific Corps got two
Federal officials like Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm say they're also helping push utility companies towards system hardening.
What is the administration doing to help prod, mandate utility companies across the country to reduce wildfire risk that they cause?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we have $20 billion that we are putting out to utilities and those who operate transmission lines to reduce wildfires. And how are we doing that? They have to maybe underground, they have to cover their conductors, they have to sectionalize.
That money is part of a recent utility investment grant announced by the Biden administration. But utilities are making their own investments. They could be cheaper in the long run than being liable for wildfires.
We've seen this happening. We've seen it happen with other utilities. Let's get ahead of it and let's, put mitigation practices to work.
Rocky Mountain Power is owned by Pacific Corps, which also operates Pacific Power in the Pacific Northwest. Jonna says the same investments happening in the Rocky Mountains are happening there too. California's Pacific Gas and Electric, which was deemed responsible for the 2018 Camp Fire, has embarked on a massive system hardening effort. including a promise to underground 10,000 miles of power lines.
Yeah, the last thing we need is more trees right now.
Brighton's mayor feels like utility companies have flipped the switch in confronting fire dangers.
I think they get it. I think they understand. They've seen it. It's happened. There's no question.
I'm Lincoln Graves reporting.
NBC Montana is always working for you to cover wildfires in our area. For complete wildfire coverage throughout the summer, stay with NBC Montana on air. Visit NBCMontana.com for wildfire warnings, maps, evacuation details, and all the other information you need to stay safe during wildfire season. And make sure to follow us on social media for the latest updates.
This summer, is Western Montana going to see more sights like this, or are we in for a quieter fire season? Well, I'll take a look back at how our water year has been so far and what that means for this upcoming fire season coming up next. There are three weather-related factors for wildfires to start and grow. Those are low humidity, wind, and dry vegetation. And I want to focus in on the dry vegetation and look at our water year since October. For much of the area, anywhere from about 6 to 9.5 inches of water fall in the form of rain and snow. But for Missoula and Kalispell, we're below average by at least an inch. Kalispell is our best performing, just under 1/10 of an inch for where we should be at this time of the year. But southwest Montana, it's even worse, anywhere from 1 to nearly 4.5 inches of water behind average, and that's making those drought conditions even worse. What's also bad news is we're looking at drier than normal conditions as well as hotter than normal conditions through the summer, and that could lead to a worser fire season.
A reminder to download our NBC Montana weather app for immediate storm alerts and warnings. It's free in your Apple or Android app store. That way our Severe Weather Alert team can keep you updated around the clock. Thank you for watching this NBC Montana Working for You special. When there's breaking news or severe weather, you can always count on us to empower and alert you and your community.